Hi, this is Charles, bass player for Final Gravity, and this is my playlist for the week of February 15th to 21st, 2026. The first band I listened to was Armored Saint, their album Delirious Nomad from 1985. Armored Saint are a severely underrated Los Angeles metal band. They started out with a 3-track EP in 1983 on Metal Blade Records that only hinted at their promise. Their debut album in 1984, the following year, was a bit of a misfire. The material was there, but they were at loggerheads with the record label and the producer, and the mix wound up being a little too polite and really didn't capture the spirit of the band. For their second album, they hired producer Max Norman, fresh off of working on the first two Ozzy Osbourne records and Y&T's Black Tiger. The first thing that struck me out of the gate in the first song was Joey Vera's growling bass. The sound is a 100% improvement over the previous album. The guitars have much more edge, and the drums have more presence and hit harder. It's a quantum leap beyond the mix on their first album. The opening track, Long Before I Die, is 147 beats per minute of hard rock goodness, with some cool modal lines and a step down for the guitar solo. It's less than 3 minutes, and it is a great way to kick off a record. An ominous riff starts off the next track, Nervous Man, marked with chromatic, sinister riffing. Over the Edge has similarly tasty guitar and bass lines. The Laugh is even speedier than Long Before I Die, and then Conqueror goes even faster still, kicking into double bass drum overdrive for the choruses. You have a moment to catch your breath before another slyly malign riff fades up from the darkness, as For the Sake of Heaviness begins. This gives us more great Armored Saint action until the final section of the song, when the key keeps changing every few bars, dropping a half step each time. There's a lot more going on here musically than you might think at first guess. They don't just bash away and strike metal poses. There are some clearly worked out rhythm section fills between Vera and drummer Gonzo. Or take the intro to their mini-epic Aftermath, a triplet-based, storm-tossed deck of a ship that segues into a lyrical instrumental passage before settling down into a compelling acoustic section that becomes the verse. It closes in on the same kind of vibe that Metallica employed in Fade to Black. Then there's Vera cheekily throwing in a bass fill in the intro to In the Hole, a track that sees him credibly switch to fretless bass later. You're Never Alone, a song about a serial killer, has a sneaky groove with syncopated accents, and the closing track, Released, is the fastest song on the album. It lyrically concerns, let's just say, sexual matters. It features Vera again, playing an unexpected, gorgeously overdriven bass lead in the middle section of the song. This album is all killer, no filler. And for my money, it is not only the best album Armored Saint ever released, but an undiscovered metal gem from the 80s before all the hairspray invaded the scene. The next album I listened to last week was Dio's Angry Machines record from 1996. This atypical outing finds Ronnie fronting a band that features Tracy G on guitar, Jeff Pilson on bass, and Vinny Appice, or Vinny Appice as he says, on drums. Gone are dragons in Egypt and gods and heavens and rainbows in your dreams, replaced instead with a rougher, more raw vocal delivery, which suits this darker musical setting. The band are in heavy Black Sabbath doom mode here, really laying into the heavy riffs and dark atmosphere. There are plenty of tricky syncopations and even some odd meter as well. Sounds like there was some influence from bands like Soundgarden or Alice in Chains starting to creep into Dio's music. The lyrics here, as I mentioned before, are perhaps his darkest and most pessimistic of any record, reflecting possibly his state of mind. Changing musical taste left him with smaller live audiences, no major record deal, and he was just coming off the failure of the Black Sabbath Mob Rules reunion for their album Dehumanizer. That fell apart quickly as well. This is probably the least loved studio album in the entire Dio catalog, including his music with Black Sabbath and Rainbow and probably even Elf. It's easy to see why. If you're looking for songs about Dungeons or Dragons, this ain't it. I'm glad I gave it a re-listen though, since I can appreciate it a little better now that 30 years have passed. God, 30 years. Jeff Pilson wrote a song here called Stay Out of My Mind. Check out the middle section of it. What is actually happening there? Bringing it a little more current, the next record I listened to was Dune? Or is it pronounced Divine? I'm not sure, but it's spelled D-V-N-E. Somebody please tell me in the comments. I'll be sure to say it correctly from now on. Anyway, it's their album Voidkind from 2024. This band is another technical progressive death metal band that comes on like the open door of a blast furnace. But they temper that with passages of clean singing, unexpected harmony vocals, occasionally slower tempos, and technicality in rhythm and arrangements that helps me get over the Cookie Monster vocal thing. Standout songs are the hypnotic Eleonora, that starts with a looping guitar and bass riff with harmonized vocals drifting over the top before it drops down a gear and really slams into the heavier section. Just as a little taste, though, before it then returns to the previous gentler vibe. It takes a full 3 minutes to get to the turpentine, but again, this section is transitory as we return to the mildly tense, unresolving cycles of the opening. The progression of the parts continues, alternating back and forth, bringing the heavy back in time for the screaming finish. Abode of the Perfect Soul, it uses the same kind of looping riff, but is an altogether heavier affair until about the 4.5 minute mark, when things get a bit Tool-like. Closing track Cobalt Sun Necropolis may be the best song here. Once again dipping their toes into the water of Tool, it features the sludgiest stoner metal groove about 2/3 of the way through the song. The climax is the most cacophonous moment on this record, ending in a pink noise roar of digital distortion before an abrupt end that leaves you hanging in silence. The last record I listened to last week was The Sea Within, their self-titled album from 2018. I think Pain of Salvation is one of the most interesting, idiosyncratic bands to wear the label progressive metal, and it doesn't even really fit them well. Sure, they're heavy and they have a lot of prog rock tendencies, but they're really kind of something else unique unto themselves. This is down primarily to singer-songwriter, multi-instrumentalist Daniel Gildenlau, who is a member of this apparent one-off supergroup, along with Ronnie Stolt, founder and leader of prog rockers The Flower Kings. He's also played with John Anderson of Yes, Steve Hackett of Genesis, and prog rockers Transatlantic and The Tangent. Bassist Jonas Reingold, also of The Tangent and Flower Kings. Keyboardist Tom Brislin of Spiraling, Meatloaf, Yes, and Kansas, and Uber drummer Marco Miniman. The album starts with so much promise, but by the end of its bloated 77-minute runtime, it has become turgid. The playing is, of course, great all around. The arrangements are clever and intelligently done. They continually provide little surprises and cool events. The tempos, however, are predominantly slow throughout. Yes, there are occasional sparks of life, like an eye for an eye for an eye, or the vaguely yes-like The Roaring Silence, thanks primarily to the busy bassing of Reingold. But the constant woe is me downtrodden lyrics and the ever so slightly whiny vocals of Gildenlau really wore on me by the end of this album. Did I mention it's really long too? It seems even longer. They have not released any additional albums, although they haven't officially ruled it out either. I'll absolutely check it out. As always, tell us in the comments what you think we need to know. What have you been listening to? What did you think of this? How's the weather where you are? And after you like and subscribe and follow us on Instagram and Facebook, why don't you check out the t-shirt of the week?